I know that all of us are going through a difficult time, but using this difficult time as an opportunity to skill ourselves to serve the students community better. I'm very happy to know that there are few principals joined for this webinar session besides the professors and associate professors and assistant professors. Uh, Once again, welcome all of you. And whether we like it or not, English language is a language which should be accepted. It's a world language to communicate across the world. We have to accept it, and to improve the skill in communicating, we need sessions like this. I'm very happy to know that Dr. Richa Srishti is an eminent person in this field and readily accepted this our invitation to hold this webinar session to help all our participants. I thank all of you for joining this. Once again, I'm welcome to this webinar session. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, Principal Sir. Now I request N. Shadharan Sir, President of Sri Narayana Guru Mandira Samiti, to deliver the presidential address.
Hello, I don't know whether I got the connection. Good
Yes,
morning,
yes.
everybody. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Yeah. Good morning, sir.
Everybody.
Good morning, sir.
I'm not
Good
able
morning.
to. Are you able to hear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Good morning,
yes, sir.
everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
I am Shashidaran, President of Sri Narayana Mandira Samiti. Samiti is an educational and charitable trust which has been principles way back in 1963 by a group of devotees of Sri Narayana Guru, who was, as already been said, is a social reformer and philosopher, and who lived in Kerala more than 100 years ago, lived and worked in Kerala. He was instrumental in changing the Kerala scene as far as the education is concerned. Social status of lived in educating people, and economically and socially, and also believed in human dignity. So he advocated people and he to educate themselves, organize themselves, and then get into the jobs or start their own business and uplift themselves, and then take care of themselves first and then help others, so that there will be much more brotherhood and then equality among the people. So we have been following those principles in a small way. We have been carrying on that mission of Sri Narayana Guru in a small way. And then we are operating a lot of education institutions, and Sri Narayana Guru College is one of the prominent among them. And we are trying to introduce all amenities and modern methods of teaching and learning. And we consider this an opportunity to introduce the e-learning. And we have started the process of preparing the e-learning materials. And also, I must compliment and congratulate our staff and faculty who have enthusiastically taken up this job of doing Zoom learning and teaching, and also digital format. And I think we'll get prepared to start in full swing by the time the government decides to reopen the colleges. As far as the subject is concerned, everybody knows communication is very important in teaching and learning as well as in research. And I think since our college is situated in a very backward area, as the principal has already said, it is important to emphasize on the language learning and communication skills, particularly students are very poor background, and then there are most of them are first-time learners. So we have given a lot of emphasis for language education and communication skills, and we conduct a lot of language programs, and I must compliment our teachers and students who are enthusiastically pursuing this. So today's webinar, I hope everybody get benefited, and I thank everybody who has joined us, not only from our college, but also from outside, all over India, I believe. I hope it will be a very successful seminar and everybody will get benefited from that. And with these words, my wishes to all of you to have a very nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President, sir. Now I welcome Mrs. Lakshmi Chaya Kale, Chairperson of Language Club, to introduce today's resource person, Dr. Richa Srishti.
Very good morning to one and all. Thanks for joining this webinar on the use of English writing for academic writing. I am Lakshmi Chaya Kale, part of SNGC coordinating group that brings innovative knowledge sharing for my co-colleagues spread across Maharashtra and all over India. My dear colleagues, writing is an integral part of our profession. Varied roles of our profession makes it mandatory for us to write in multiple ways, such as research papers, theses, project reports, notes, or even setting of exam papers. All of us always strive to use proper and correct English in our academic writing, and there is always a scope for improvement. Today's topic is aimed at providing new vision, new thought in effective use of English language for academic writing. Dr. Richa Srishti's webinar should help us in learning best practices in the use of English language. I offer a warm welcome to Dr. Richa Srishti ma'am. Richa Srishti ma'am is a faculty in charge at the Department of English and a professor with G.D. Goenka University, Gurgaon. She is an alumni of JNU, New Delhi, wherein she completed her doctoral research, MPhil, and earlier MA in linguistics. In her career spanning close to 20 years, her focus was primarily on natural language processing techniques. She has a strong background in theoretical linguistics and English literature. She has to her credit 4 books on linguistics published by John Benjamin and others. She has published more than 15 plus research papers on linguistics and more than 15 conference papers in national, international journals, conferences, and conducted multiple workshops and seminars. A long list of research includes Hindi, Urdu, and other South Indian languages, Bantu language, and Indian Sign Language. Welcome, ma'am, to the seminar.
Thank you,
Lakshmi.
And I thank the principal sir and the president sir, as well as I welcome everybody here who is present for the webinar session on this weekend actually. Usually we don't want to be somewhere else on weekends, but I think I should welcome everybody here, whoever is present, researchers, students, as well as assistant professors. Shall I start sharing my PPT?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is it visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So imagine it's for everybody. I think if we imagine ourselves working on a research paper for 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months. Like I usually work for 6-7 months, and then we select a good journal when we finish the research paper, and we are submitted it. After the submission, you have to wait for 2, 3, or maybe 4, 5 months, and you get the reviewers' comments. When you get the reviewers' comments, the reviewer comments are like, the English language used in this research paper is not of publication quality, one, or they write like the main author needs a native English co-author, or the language used is in this research paper it needs significant improvement. You have invested 1 year of your research in writing this research work, and it has come to a knot actually. What has happened? What is the issue here? You have written your ideas 100% correct. You have written grammatical English actually. Your expressions are right. But what has happened? What are the issues? To address these issues, I am having this webinar session. So I hope that at the end of this webinar session, we learn a lot about writing research papers and all kinds of academic writing. And we should improve a lot and we should become a better research writer. So for that, our agenda for today is, first we will talk about the process of writing, something about it. Then what is academic writing? Why do we use English in academic writing? And what are the challenges that we face as non-native writers actually? I'll not say here speakers, but writers. After knowing the challenges, we should look at the strategies which we will use for using English effectively in our academic writing. So first we'll start with process of writing. What actually is process of writing? Process of writing is nothing but expression of your ideas, your thoughts into any written language actually. It is very complex. Why? Because it needs higher order skills, it needs cognition, and it needs other skills which are very hard to master. It is also recursive, which means it is iterative. What does iterative mean? Iterative means that whenever you are processing your writing, you can go back to the steps. For example, if we see the first step in writing, which is pre-writing. Pre-writing is when you just think and organize your ideas in your mind, and usually you think in your first language. After that, you put your ideas and thoughts into sentences and paragraphs. And finishing this process, you go to revising, where you have to think of your readers' requirements, what do they require and what do they expect. So you revise your documents accordingly. And finally, you do editing and proofreading. So recursivity is a property that makes you go back to even pre-writing when you are revising. Whenever you are editing, you think of something, that is going back to pre-writing. When you are revising, you can go back to drafting also. So writing is a very complex process, as well as it is recursive process, and it needs time actually. You have to devote a lot of time to writing. Writing includes writing in any language. So we are talking about writing in English language. And there's another thing, writing well. There are many people who can write English perfectly all right, like grammatically perfectly all right, but they cannot write English well. What does it mean to write English well? Write English well means that apart from your grammatical constructions, you have to hook your readers to your writing. Whatever you have written, it should be interesting, and it should your readers should be hooked to it. I would like to quote Professor Raja Rao here, the well-known author of the novel Kantapura. He has written in 1938 in his preface about English language that one has to convey in a language that is not one's own spirit. It is actually right about English. We cannot write like the English. So please note that being a non-native writer, we cannot write like the English people. We should not. But we have also to write like global citizens. So he says that we cannot write only as Indians, and our method of expression has to be a dialect which will someday prove to be as distinctive and colorful as the Irish and the American. Time alone will justify it. So what does it mean by it? He means that we have to have the Indianness in ourselves. So we'll be a dialect of English, but we have to become global also. So this is a very important thing that we have to keep in mind when we are writing in any other language. He also says, I'll quote him, he also says that after language, the next problem is that of style, because Indians usually talk very quickly. We do everything quickly. So our tempo is very quick, quicker than other people in the world. So we think quickly, we talk quickly, and when we move quickly. This also gets infused in our written expressions when we write in English, anything like creative writing or academic. So we have to think of our style also, and we have to think of our Indianness as well as our globalness. Now coming back to writing English well and writing research. So there are many creative writers who write English very well. They are very famous, but will they be able to write research well also? I don't think so. They might be, they might not be. Why? Because it's something different to write English well, being a creative writer, and writing research. So as you all know that research writing is also called scientific writing, academic writing. And why is it hard? Why is it different? Because it is one of the highest forms of scholarly writing. So to achieve that, you have to master a lot of skills. It has different aims, it has different style, it has different linguistic features, it needs different skills to master. So the aim should be, whenever you write any academic piece of writing, the aim should be to display your understanding of the subject. So you give information in order to show the readers that I know this actually. And the style is always very, very formal. That is why the linguistic features also include formality. The language used should be formal, it should have passive voice. We would come to this later specifically. And then we have to avoid first person, because it's not our own view actually. We are giving some information, so you have to avoid first person. And the basic skill which we need in academic writing is we have to formulate, we should know how to formulate our arguments logically. There are other skills which we will also talk about, but these are one of the basic things. What is actually academic writing? It is anything which you write in an academic setting. So when you write it, you write about your research findings as well as somebody else's research findings. And when you do that, you have to use and cite sources. You just cannot write like you have written it. So you have to use and cite sources. You have to describe things, but whenever you describe, it is formal. The descriptions are always formal. The instructions are also formal, and you describe processes also while you do academic writing. So as I told you earlier that it's any kind of writing in an academic setting. Second important point to note about academic writing is that whenever you are writing, you have to think from the perspective of your own subject, because the readers would be the same, and when you write, it has its own conventions. You have that each subject has its own vocabulary which explains itself. So if there is a person from medical background, he has to use specific vocabulary, and he cannot use it for a person who is from literature background. So you have to keep that in mind. It is used in all kinds of books, book reports, academic books, translations, research paper, research article, conference paper, all kinds of academic journals, dissertation, and thesis. Now we'll come back to the characteristics of academic writing. Why is it different? Why is it hard? And what are the differences that we have to keep in mind? First characteristic is that it is structured. It has a logical order. Everything has to be in logical order, and if you fail that, it is a very weak piece of academic writing. Second is because it deals with the facts, it has to be factual, it has to be accurate, it has to be precise, and whatever you write, whatever arguments you give, you have to give with evidence. You should not write anything vaguely. It has to be very, very accurate, and you have to give all the references. The tone and style of your academic writing should be very, very formal. So in order to do that, you have to use appropriate language, appropriate tenses.
Hello. Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah, it is.
Richa, ma'am. She's phone. Hello.
Yeah, ma'am, I think I muted myself.
Yeah, you muted yourself. Yes.
Sorry, I'll start again. I think we will. Okay, so is it fine now? Is it fine?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm audible also.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So I think we went through it, and we went through this also. Sorry. Okay, so we were here. So as I was telling you, our language should be appropriate and tenses should be used accordingly. And we'll go back to each and every aspect of it after I finish the general introduction. Why the objective, why the point of view of academic writing should always be in third person? Because you are educating people on the facts. You are not asking them to support you on any opinion. So it has to be always written in third person. The final and very important characteristics of academic writing is hedging. Hedging actually literally means trimming, but in the context of academic writing, it means that you need to reduce the risk of uncertainty. What does that mean? It means that whenever you are writing academically, you should not make very strong claims because it can be contradicted. So when you are writing it's proved, you only write it when it's a kind of universal fact. So usually you have to use it is suggested. As I think Prasidaran sir was talking about English, that English is a global language, and now English is also an academic language, which helps to interact with researchers all over the world. For example, if I don't know Marathi and if I know English, I would be able to interact with a researcher in Maharashtra. I would be able to meet or interact with a researcher anywhere in the world. So it's very important for us to know that we have to use English if we have to do something well in our academic background. Because it's a language of choice for many scholarly journals, not only nationally but also internationally. So if it is a global language and if it is a well-known language, why is it hard? It is hard for us, the non-native speakers, but it is also hard for native speakers in English because academic writing is very different than creative writing or other forms of writing. Before moving on to our strategies, how to write effective English in academic writing, I would like to take you to the challenges in using English in academic writing. And those challenges I have categorized in three different categories. One challenge is of knowledge and motivation. When we have problem with our knowledge as well as motivation, that is K. Second is language challenge. Third would be study and organizational skills challenge. So I would like to give you specific challenges and we will think of in which category it should come. Because the moment you start diagnosing a problem, half your problem is anyway solved. So first we are thinking of ideas. When we start thinking of writing any research paper, we have a problem with this because we are not able to organize our ideas first and we don't have knowledge about many things. So it will be in the K category and as well as it will be in the O category. Second is because we are non-native speakers or writers, we think in our own language. So we translate ideas from our first language and that is also a kind of challenge, how to do that. When we think of the ideas, we have the ideas. Now the challenge is that we have to organize those ideas well. After organizing the ideas, we must understand the requirement of the readers. We must understand why we are writing that piece of writing, academic writing. And it can be, the challenge can be of the knowledge and the challenge can also be of our own organization. So we fail to understand why we are writing the paper. And we can also lack vocabulary, we can also lack grammar. It will be in the language challenge section. We have the idea, we know how to put it into sentences. Now what is the challenge? Now the challenge is that we are very inexperienced as a reader, so we are not exposed to the specific text of our specific area, our discipline. It can be a language challenge also, and second, it can be an organizational skill challenge also. And when we don't know, we have lack of motivation to write, and we don't have any interest. So that is also a challenge that we have to keep ourselves motivated as well as interested. And the second problem when we don't know our research area appropriately is that sometimes as a researcher, we feel that we don't have anything to communicate. So how will we write? Many students have come to me regarding this problem, that they don't know what should be the topic of either their thesis or synopsis or the term. So we have issue and we have challenge in this area also when we are unable to think of relevant topics. That can be categorized as a knowledge issue and that can also be an organizational issue. Now I'll give you some of the challenges, but I'll not categorize it into those three categories. It's up to you how you comprehend this, but I'll just go through the other challenges also. When you are writing a research paper, you don't write only your research findings. You are also integrating other people's research. So this is a challenge that you have to integrate other research texts into your own style. You have to paraphrase, and paraphrasing is a very important skill to practice academic writing. You also shouldn't repeat. So you should use dictionary thesaurus. There are many people who are not able to do it. So that's also a challenge. When you make your phrases, formulate your phrases, you have to formulate the phrases in a sentence properly. This also is very important and we'll come to it in the later slides. Changing between active voice and passive voice. Usually when you write English, in general writing, it's prohibited to use passive voice. It's rarely used. But in academic writing, you have to focus on the context and you have to change between active voice and passive voice. You should think all of this in terms of KLO. That's your task. You condense the original text when you are citing sources, or you extend the sources depending on your research paper or your research topic. That's also an issue, and that's also a very big challenge, because you are dealing with facts. You cannot be vague, so you have to reduce ambiguity to 0%. And finally, because you are writing academically, there are many style sheets or referencing systems like APA, MLA, Chicago. It depends on your research area or discipline, and it also depends on the journal where you are sending. So you have to master all these referencing systems. So you think of these challenges in terms of KLO, and we can move on to strategies, how we should avoid the things that we become near native English writer actually. Some of the things I'll deal here is very general, and some of the things later I'll deal with the specific things. First general thing and very important thing is position. Whenever you write English, you should focus where you are arguing, front part of the sentence or the last part of sentence, because the first part of the sentence is very, very important when you are writing. You compare the sentence, the first sentence I'll give. In the fight for the realization, the relationship between the center and the state has to be balanced. So what are you trying to talk here about? You are trying to talk here about the fight. But in the second sentence, the words are same. Only the front part has changed. In the second sentence, the relationship between the center and the state has to be balanced in the fight for the realization of the economic development. Now, what is the difference in the first, from the first sentence and second sentence? In the first sentence, you are focusing on fight. In the second sentence, you are focusing on relationship. So it changes everything about how you write. Please think about the position whenever you write. Second is style, actually. I am giving you this paragraph just to read it. Just will take one and a half minutes to read it. This is a piece of academic writing. What do you think of it? What do you make out of it? How to make people work harder is a topic that lots of people have written about in last few years. There are lots of different things, etc. And I think some of them are okay. When we think about this, we should remember the old Chinese proverb that you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. So how do we increase production? It's quite a complex thing, but I'll just talk about a couple of ideas. So if anybody has given you this piece of writing and asks you to assess, how will you assess? I have highlighted it with red wherever the problem is. So see the first sentence, how to make people work harder. It is not a piece of very good academic writing. Why? Because it is very, very informal. You have to, it's very imprecise vocabulary. It's not academic vocabulary. So you have to write how to motivate people to work harder. And wherever you have used lots of people, last few years, these kind of expressions you can never use in academic writing. You cannot be vague because these are vague expressions. Lots of people. How many people? Last few years. How many years? And etc. You cannot use. And when you are writing, I think some of them are okay, it's very, very personal. You cannot use personal expressions or when we think about it, you cannot use we think, I think. And the old Chinese proverb, what is the problem here? The problem is that you cannot quote in an academic writing. You can never quote proverbs unless and until you are working on proverbs actually. And you cannot ask questions like, so how do we increase production? It's a rhetorical question you cannot ask. You are not talking to somebody and asking them to reply back. So you can never do this. And the final sentence also, but I'll just talk about a couple of ideas. It's too personal and very, very vague. Couple of ideas. What ideas? Very precise when you write academically. So this, I think, just we have gone through it. I have told you about, like, R, okay, this is too informal, V and I is too personal, don't quote proverbs, and yeah, one I think I have missed. It's quite, you can never use contractions in academic writing, so you have to avoid contractions. Okay, so now we come to an important strategy, that is passive voice. Why do we use passive voice actually? Use passive voice because you think that the doer is not important. For example, compare these two sentences. Arguments were made by the students, optional, and the students made the argument. So what is the difference here? The difference is that when you are writing arguments were made, you are focusing on arguments. So if you question, it would be like what were made. So arguments were made will be the answer. In the second sentence, the students made the argument. The focus in the students. Who made the argument? Students made the argument. Similarly, the sentence, these two sentences. Galileo discovered the moons of Jupiter. You are focusing on who was the person who discovered the moons of Jupiter. And in the second sentence, the moons of Jupiter were discovered. You are focusing on the moons of Jupiter, like the discovery of it, not who did it. So you have to think of focus when you are writing. Completely, it becomes completely different when you think about passive voice. Second strategy is that whenever you start your sentence, you should never use I think. So you can never use I think. Just write like I think James believes that global warming will. So instead, you have to write James, whoever the author is, James 2008 believes that. And as I told you earlier, it's not a conversation that we are doing. So you cannot use conversational opening phrases. Like when I'm saying like this, here I can start with the sentence, well, you see, yes, but you cannot write it in academic writing. So you have to use more appropriate opening phrases like moreover, furthermore, on the contrary, for instance, in view of. And now something about short sentences and long sentences, how to use them. Everybody knows that short sentences are clear and they are very easy to comprehend also, read also, comprehend also. But when you use too many short sentences in your academic writing, your writing becomes very dull, monotonous. But when you use long sentences, though they are interesting, but it's very difficult for you to construct also and for others to process also. So the effective writing, it uses a mixture of some long sentences and some short sentences. To give you a clear idea of that, just check this paragraph. It has 5 short sentences, but when you read it, actually, it is quite dull. The second sentence, the same paragraph, has been written in one full sentence. It's slightly complex when you read it with colons and semicolons. And this, finally. So what is the difference between all 3 paragraphs? First is very dull because it has short sentences but easy to comprehend. Second is difficult to comprehend, but it is like quite complex to comprehend. Third is perfect mixture of some short sentences and some long sentences. As academic writing deals with facts and figures, you can never be vague. You have to be as exact as possible. So you cannot write about 100 of years ago. You can never ever write. You have to just avoid it. But if sometimes it becomes necessary to write the estimated numbers, you
never use about, you have to use approximately, because that's an academic vocabulary item. I'll talk about academic vocabulary also later, and I'll give you some links also from where you can get the academic vocabulary. When you start your sentence with it is or there is, it's a sign of very weak English. So you should avoid beginning sentences like that. It is important to highlight very weak. You have to write the most recent works that are important to highlight. Similarly, if you write with there is little attention given to the event, it's perfectly all right, grammatically correct, but it's a sign of your weak English. So you have to write little attention is given to the event. Next is to avoid repetition, which I think I referred to, and redundancy. What is repetition? When you repeat words, you don't use synonyms actually. So synonyms, whenever you use synonyms or alternate words, it will make your text more interesting. So if you look at the example, most family businesses employ less than 10 people. And after that, again, you start these businesses. So you are repeating businesses twice. That is weak English. You have to use most family businesses employ less than 10 people. These firms. So what you have done, you have used an alternate word or synonym for businesses. Redundancy. Redundancy is also kind of repetition, but it's repetition of an idea, or whenever you include some point which is not relevant to that context. For example, you look at this sentence and you can think about it. What is irrelevant here? Homelessness is a global problem in the whole world. What is problematic here? Whole world is problematic here, because when you are talking about global problem, it itself is talking about whole world. So why are you talking again and again about this? So you have to write crisp. Homelessness is a global problem without the whole world. So you have to avoid redundancy as well as repetition. I think I talked with you about hedging. So that you don't have to make statements that can be contradicted. So you have to play very safe. You have to be cautious. So for that, you have to use language of caution. So if you are writing, students find writing exam essays difficult. Anybody can easily contradict it. So you cannot write. You can use it in conversational English, but you cannot write it in your research paper. So you have to write. Most students find writing exam essays difficult. So do you understand the difference that in the first one it can be contradicted, in the second one nobody will contradict it actually. Similarly with this sentence, demand for healthcare exceeds supply. Anybody can say no, it's not true, I can contradict it. But when you say demand for healthcare usually exceeds supply, nobody will be able to contradict. So that is your language of caution. You have to be very cautious when you write hypothesis. When you are outlining a hypothesis, because hypothesis always needs to be tested, you have to be cautious, and that usually you will use in the introduction. Second area where you have to use caution is particularly when you discuss the results of a study, because it might not be conclusive. Third is when you are commenting on the work of other writers. How can you be so sure about it? Because the other person has written it. So you use the language of caution. And fourth is when you are making predictions. So whenever you are making predictions, you should use may or might. You should always be cautious about it. How to use language of caution? There are many verbs where you use, and there are many adverbs and modals also. So just to give you a glimpse of this, look at this sentence. If you are writing crime is linked to poor education, that is not at all cautious, because it's very positive. So you have to write in this manner. Crime may be linked to poor education, or crime is frequently linked to poor education, or crime tends to be linked to poor education. So you have to use some adverbs to make it cautious. You have to use some modals. You have to use some verbs of language of caution also, like tend to. Uh, After modifiers, you have to you can use before an adjective. You have to use some modifiers like quite, fairly, or rather. So you cannot say an accurate summary. That would be wrong for academic writing. You have to say a fairly accurate summary. You cannot say an inconvenient location. You have to say a rather inconvenient. A significant discovery is very, very wrong. You have to write quite a significant discovery, which will make your expression very cautious and nobody can contradict it. Next, we will come to few verbs, how to use that. So you compare the sentence, the author states that the cost of living is high. It's very positive, it's not cautious. So you have to write, the author suggests that the cost of living is high. So whenever you refer to sources, your verb use indicates your degree of caution, whether you are positive or you are cautious. Other verbs which you can use for cautious language is think, consider, hypothesize, believe, claim, or presume. Because in Indian languages we don't have any definite article, this is something which we all make mistakes. Just to give you an example, I was proofreading my own stories yesterday, and I have missed many of the definite articles which I proofread it later. So you have to think about it where to use a definite article. When you start, please try to remove it unless and until it's necessary or it specifies or it refers to some events or objects or people. So when you write like the cells were plated, it's an example of weak English. You have to use cells were plated. But in sentences like which caused a large influx of human population to the region, that is an example of weak English because you have to use which caused the large influx of human populations to the region. Another strategy for effective English is that we Indians use a lot of that wherever it's not needed also. So please learn to remove that. It should be always used when you begin some dependent clause or when you are describing a noun like that person, he's that person. So in the sentence, the results that were found, the second sentence were found, that's a dependent clause. So without that, this sentence would be ungrammatical. So it's necessary here, you have to use it. But when you are writing, the result showed that many people like fruits. There are two different sentences. There's no clause which is dependent on each other. So that is unnecessary here. So you have to remove that here. The result showed many people like fruits. I think I have mentioned earlier also that you cannot use contractions. So isn't, don't, doesn't, can't. Why isn't the decision made? It's wrong. You have to write why is not the decision. Yes, this is important that you should never use slang, colloquialism, or sexist language while writing a research paper. There are many people who believe that if you are using slang, you are speaking better English. But actually, it's not when you write. So you cannot write telly, document or doctor, then colloquialisms like I'm gonna or buzz off, or any sexist language like chairman. You have to write chairperson because that has also become very important in these days. You cannot write this stuff used in. because this is a conversational English. You have to write material, or this material used in this experiment is better. There is an academic vocabulary for academic writing. So never use common vocabulary. Like when you are writing have got, you have to write have found. When you write a lot, you have to write a great deal, or even nice. When you are writing nice, instead of it, you have to write attractive, advantages. And when you write the other thing, you have to write the other issue, problem, notion, idea, topic. So never ever use common vocabulary which you use for conversational English. Uh, so it's the same for formal verbs. For example, speed up is a formal verb. So if you're writing in the last decade, the pace of change sped up. It's perfectly all right, grammatically correct, but it is the sign of weak English. It cannot be accepted in academic writing. So you have to write, in the last decade, the pace of change accelerated. Similarly, if you have written, could Darwin have imagined? So imagine is also kind of non-formal verb. So you have to write, could Darwin have envisaged the controversy his word has caused? As I was talking to you about not being vague, you can never use vague expressions like we saw in that paragraph. They, we, people, that area, this area, you cannot use that. So whenever you write, you have to write who, they, who are they, the company, which company, that area, which area. So you have to be very concise, and you should always avoid vague references, whether it's to person, places, or things. You should never write anything without any context when you are writing a piece of academic writing. There are some verbs which show your personal attitude. You should never use that, like luckily, remarkably, surprisingly. You have to always use academic vocabulary. I'll give you a link in the references slide where you can download the academic vocabulary like academic adjective, noun, verb. For example, you cannot write I got or get. You have to write acquired. That's academic. Uh, you cannot write I trust. You have to write rely. And you cannot write difference. So you have to write vary. It varies. There are some verbs which are called verbs of reference, which are used to summarize another writer's idea, because you need it a lot in academic writing. You are not only writing about your ideas, you are writing about others' ideas also. And whenever you introduce quotations, because you do it a lot in academic writing. So when you summarize other writer's idea, like Chomsky argued that in order to model competence, you have to use verbs of reference like argued. When you are introducing any quotation, like Scott, this observe. So observed and argue are the verbs of references. There are some other verbs of reference also we use. They have different patterns. First, which I have given, it has a pattern of verb plus somebody, thing, plus noun or gerund. So for, and you have to use for here also. So Lee blamed the idea for. Similarly, you have verbs like blame, censure, and these are, remember that these are all academic verbs. Commend, condemn, criticize, they all follow the pattern of that. Some other reference verbs, they follow the pattern of something else, like verb plus somebody or thing plus as plus gerund, like interpretation. Interpret. So interprets rising oil prices as a result of. These verbs include assess, characterize, classify, define, evaluate, interpret, etc. But you cannot use etc. in academic writing. When you are writing a research paper, you usually present a case. So whenever you are presenting a writer's case, you use verbs like argue, claim, consider, hypothesize, suggest, observe, state. For example, you have to write Carl 1990 suggested that eating raw eggs could be harmful. You cannot write Carl 1990 said that eating raw eggs could be harmful. There are some verbs which you have to use while you are describing a reaction to a previously stated position which somebody already has done. So those verbs are like accept, admit, agree, deny, doubt. For example, first example when I gave you, it was suggested. Here you can see Carl 1990 doubts Daniel 2009 suggestion. Other verbs which we can use are assume, conclude, include, reveal, etc. Coming to a very important point in academic writing, using tenses. Whenever you write tenses, you have to use appropriate tenses in academic writing. First important thing for us, like Indian speakers, is that there are some verbs in English which don't take continuous aspect. Uh, we usually do this mistake a lot because in Indian languages, any verb, like every verb can take raha hai or ing, like ja raha hai, soch raha hai, kha raha hai, samajh raha hai. But in English, there are verbs like state verbs and performative verbs like prefer, own, believe, or assume, deny, refuse, like this. You can never use it in continuous aspect. So you cannot say like the writer is preferring, the writer is suggesting, or the writer is promising. When you write introduction, uh, you have to use present tense. Why do you have to use present tense? Because you include some background information which is already accepted in your field, and you are also explaining why whatever you are doing is important. So you have to write present tense. Like genomics provides crucial information. That is a line from the introduction part. Present tense is also used when you are referring to charts. Figures like figure 1 or 2 displays, chart 2 shows. When you are reporting research, current research or recent research, you use present perfect tense. For example, a great deal of research has been conducted. Then when you describe methods and results used, you have to use past tense, like the samples were measured, the results indicated. And finally, when you conclude, in your conclusion, you have to use a combination of tenses because you have referred to your research also, you have referred to some other person's research, you are speaking about uh, something that has to be done in the future or about limitations in your conclusion. So you use a combination of tenses. For example, here, like found, was, it was not possible, then causes, studies are necessary to determine this. So this is a part of conclusion. There are some punctuation things which I would like to talk about because it's necessary for us. In Indian language, we have no capitals. So, and in English, you don't have actually very precise rules about capital letters. So you have to think of where to use capital and where not to use capital. Capital is always used, as everybody knows, but I'll just revise it that it should be the first word in a sentence, in a beginning. Whenever you write the names of organizations, all the letters, the first letter should be capital, like first letter of all the words, like Mumbai University. Days and months, Friday, July, that should be also capital. Nationality words, when you are using like France, the French, so the would be small letters, and French should be in capital letters. Names of people will always be capital letters, of places. Now, the important thing is that whenever you are writing titles of book or paper titles or your topic, you have to use capital letters only in content words like par and the state. So, par would be in capital letters, the first letter of par, and state, not and the, because and the are not content words, they are function words. So, like preposition, auxiliary verbs, articles, these conjunction, these should never be capitalized. Yes, apostrophes. Apostrophes are very problematic. It's easy to comprehend, but it's hard to use it properly. They are mainly used in two situations that everybody knows, that it is used to show contractions like he apostrophe s is a leading authority. But just remember that contractions you cannot use in academic vocabulary of English. And with possessive like whose, like professors, secretary, students, marks, both in singular and plural. But there are issues with it that people confuse, because in pronunciation it slightly seems same, like some people confusing who apostrophe s, whose and whose. So who apostrophe s is only for contraction, it is not whose. So you cannot write who apostrophe s books are these, that's wrong. You write whose books are these. Similarly, you should not confuse with your and you apostrophe s, apostrophe r actually. So you cannot write following your instincts, you have to write without apostrophe following your instincts. It's very difficult and it's very easy to confuse with certain plurals when they are in lowercase and certain plurals when they are in uppercase. And it's very different in English. When you are writing he has two BAs and you are using for plural, you are using apostrophe s, that's clearly wrong. You have to write he has two BAs without apostrophe. But on the other hand, when you are writing about lowercase letters, he signed with K's and H's, then you have to use actually apostrophe. So you have to write he signed with K apostrophe S and H apostrophe S. Again, when you are using abbreviations, you have to use apostrophe. So if you are writing all my sisters have PhDs without apostrophe, it's entirely wrong. You have to write with apostrophe. As we talked about you and your, you should also avoid its and its confusion. First, it with apostrophe s is contraction, and second, it's without apostrophe s is possessive. I have just given you a sentence from a very famous book by a very famous writer, Stumped and White. It's a wise dog that scratches its own fleas. So first, it is a wise dog, and second, it is possessive. People find some difficulty with using apostrophe with numbers also. So a woman in her 50s, you should not write apostrophe without apostrophe, is right. 90s also you cannot write apostrophe, you have to write without apostrophe. I hope we have some time left. Yeah, I think we have. Yes. I think I have finished with punctuation. So whenever people use colon and semicolon, they are very confused. So please never use colons and semicolons if you are not confident about it, because semicolons are always used when it's like two different sentences, two independent clauses, and colons are always used inside the sentence. So for example, when you are writing a quotation, you are giving an example or you are citing a list, you should use colon. For example, there are two choices at this time, run away or fight. So you have to use colon, not semicolon. Or quotation, like this was said by Shakespeare, so you have to use quotation. Semicolons, as I told you, it's always used when you join two independent clauses. So it's like two ideas or two thoughts that you can write it as separate sentences also. If you stop eating so much food, you will have to go on diet. There are two different sentences. Or I had a huge meal, however I'm hungry again. So these are the few strategies which we should use while writing English. So we are able to get effectively through our research paper. At least we can complete our research paper in a manner that it should be of a publishable quality. I have given you references also. There are some handbooks. Basically, the second one, the element of style, is very important. And I've given you some links for downloading academic vocabulary also. So if we have any questions, did I early finish?
No, ma'am. Right on time.
No,
Right?
yeah, I didn't look at the clock, but I don't know.
No, it was right on time.
So any questions, anybody?
Saraswati, ma'am?
Yeah, if anyone. Hello.
Yeah,
If
hello.
anyone have any question, kindly raise your hand so I will unmute you.
Any questions?
Okay, ma'am. There's a question here from Makaran Vakde. Right? Just hold on.
Yeah, I
I
think
unmuted. The person who raised hand, I unmuted you. Kindly unmute yourself.
yeah, there's somebody called Makarand Vakade.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any concrete format for academic writing on the basis of beginning, middle, and ending? Yeah, it actually it has a logical structure, as I told you. So it will be, I think, another webinar when I'll talk about that structure. That will take, I think, one seminar for us. So it has it first. Second, when we need to translate, your question is when we need to translate native languages, dialects, and related, how can we follow? Yes. The thing is, when you are translating native languages, you have to translate the essence. So you have to know, you have to be perfect in your language also, you have to be perfect in English also, and you have to know the nuances of academic writing also. So I think all three has to be taken care of, and then you have a translation of academic writing. Did I answer your question?
Hello.
Yes. Can I ask?
We can unmute the participants so that I can listen to their views also.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, ma'am. I get my answer. Yes, ma'am.
So
Thank you, ma'am.
I unmuted all the participants. Those who want to ask a question, unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Okay,
madam,
and
can I ask?
tell your name and then ask the question.
Yeah, my name is Tara Rao. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
Madam, can...
Yeah, ma'am, ask the question.
Yeah, madam, I wish to know if you can share this PPT with us.
Yes, yes, sure, I will. There's no issue why I should not.
Yes, ma'am, you... Okay. Okay, and also, can you give us those links that you said you would be providing us?
I have given the references slide actually.
Sorry, I'm not able to hear you, ma'am. There's a lot of confusion.
I have given given
Please mute yourself. It is creating a lot of noise. Those who want to speak, kindly unmute. Others, rest, please mute yourself.
I think I have given links in the reference section. Fine, so you'll get all the links there.
Anyone able to first questions?
नहीं क्वेश्चन आंसर कर रहे हैं
You are not audible. Can you ask?
Hello. Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Eliza George. Hello. Hello.
Yes, Alicia. Go on.
Yes, ma'am, thank you for this session. It was very informational and we got a lot of insight. My question is regarding the use of continuous forms. So I know you're speaking with respect to we as adults writing for academic purposes, but even when we teach students how to write, we often face this issue that students tend to use continuous forms. So can you throw a little more light on it, because that is a problem that we frequently face even as educators and as personal writers, academic writers.
So these kind of errors we all make at different times in our lives. I wanted to tell you that here's something that is presented to you, and yet you can always go back and change.
Can you hear me?
Here.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you send it to your principal, she says, oh, you know what, let's change the date. You're going to say, sure, ma'am, not a problem. It will take me a minute to do that. You go back.
Can others?
No, I think she asked.
Download.
See, I think somebody. Hello.
Yes,
ma'am. You are audible. You speak.
Okay, so who asked the question? At that time, there was interruption. I just heard the first part? Can you give me the second part also? Who has asked the question, please? That was a very good question. I would like to answer it.
Not only for educators, but students as well. Please know this is a free session.
Please mute yourself. It is creating a lot of noise.
On Thursday, 12/1, we will share this with you on daily.
Something about that question. Who has asked that question, please? Okay. I'm also giving my email ID here so that you can contact me if you have any question. Yeah. Is it right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because yeah, anybody who wants to contact me, please you can contact me.
हो गया खत्म ना
Hello.
Saraswati ma'am. Sudhama Bhandari sir wants to ask something. Unmute him.
1 second, ma'am. Your name you said, ma'am?
क्वेश्चन करने वाले पढ़ाकू लोग भी होते हैं क्वेश्चन करते हैं अरे
Raise his hand.
Raised hand.
Yeah,
हाँ
below that.
ना बोल के छीन लेता है
I audible?
Yes.
Yes. So good afternoon, ma'am. I had a question. My question was regarding using the continuous form when you're continuous tense while writing. So I know you're speaking with respect to we as adults writing for academic purposes, but also while teaching students about academic writing, this is a problem that we often face, that students tend to use the continuous form. Uh, so could you shed a more light on it, like if it comes to teaching, say,
Yeah,
students or
very,
yes, ma'am.
very good question. See, when you teach English, you have to look at verb classes in English actually. Which verb classes take ing and which verb? Okay. Can you hear me? Eliza, yes. So you have to think of you have to read about some of the verb classes which take continuous aspect and which don't, and ask your students not to literally translate it because they are using continuous aspect because they are just translating like Hindi or Marathi to English. So that should not be done, and you have to learn about what are the verbs which don't take continuous tense in English.
आवाज कमी कर गाडी फक्त आवाज कमी कर गाडी
Did I answer the question, Eliza?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So you can contact me later also. We can talk about it. It's a very persistent problem, and it's also very challenging for us as English teachers also.
Yes, ma'am. I understand. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Eliza. Anyone else? I can see some raised hands. So there's some Darshan Singh Negi. Yes. Darshan Singh Negi.
Bhandari sir, ask your question.
Is it audible now?
Yes.
Okay, myself, Dr. Bhandari is speaking here. My query is that whether hadn't, didn't, shouldn't, won't, these are applicable in academic writing?
No, that is what I said. In contractions, you can never use in academic writing actually.
Okay, that's my question. Because most of the, generally all the writers, or we can call it some books, everywhere it is written there. And general people, they use in the daily writing.
Yeah, so that is why I had mentioned that you avoid using contractions in academic writing.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Amar Chakravarti. Yes, Amar Chakravarti. Please ask. You have raised your hand. Shall I lower it?
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ma'am. I have one question. I'm a student of literature and I'm pursuing PhD from BHU, and I'm working on film and literature interface. So I know I'm asking this question out of syllabus, but the thing is, could you please help me with this question? That what would be your suggested methodologies for a researcher like me who is working on film literature? What would be your suggested methodologies, like a researcher like me who is working on film literature?
Yeah, I got it, but I didn't get what I have to do the question. It was not
What would be your suggested methodologies? Means what methodologies would you suggest me for a researcher like me who is working on film literature?
Film literature.
Yeah.
Are you working
Yes,
on
ma'am.
film literature? Can you talk
Yes, ma'am.
literature? Huh?
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about it after this, because this is outside the topic of this, and I am also doing some work on film, like movies,
Okay.
cinema, and literature. So we can talk about this. You have my mail.
Okay. Okay.
Contact me. Fine.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Fine. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes. Vandana.
Hello, madam.
Yeah.
Hello. My question is when to use a single quote and when to use double quote.
Okay. See, double quote is normally used whenever you quote somebody, means somebody has spoken it. It's like a quotation. Okay. And usually single quotes are used to emphasize. So when you are emphasizing something, or you are like, there are some terms which some other researcher has used, and it's like a universal term, and then you are using it, so you should use that word within single quotes.
Okay. Thank you so much, madam.
Okay, thank you. There is somebody else, I don't know, name is not there. 6, 9, I don't know. Okay.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, your name is?
May I speak, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Yes, I am Chandrakant Chauhan. Actually, I want to know that in academic languages, what is place of phrasal and idiomatic languages? Idiomatic use of idiomatic.
Yes, I had given one example of that proverb there. You should not use, because idiomatic languages are like part of stylistics. Is it right? So you should not make you should not make your language dramatic. You should never use idiomatic expressions, proverbs like that.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am. Thanks.
Darshan Singh Negi, I think, has not asked the question, and he has raised his hand till now. Can you ask? Darshan Singh Negi, please. Hello.
Darshan Singh Negi.
He has raised his hand.
Yeah, ma'am.
Then I think so. I don't know.
I think he is left.
Yeah, he's not asking the question.
Saraswati ma'am, unmute everyone for a minute so that we announce his name.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, unmuted all. They can unmute themselves.
Darshan Singh Negi, please.
Darshan Singh Negi.
I think he's not able to.
Actually, they have to unmute themselves. I unmuted already.
Oh, he's not able to, I think. I have given my email ID anyway. If anybody wants to contact me.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, how can we use intertextuality in the academic writings for the reference of, or for the sake of putting references?
Yeah, that is why I said for putting references, first you have to know what is the style sheet or the referencing system you are using. Fine. And if you are using text and you have to refer to it, then you have to use paraphrase. So you have to go through, there are many skills that you have to master. First is paraphrasing, second is referencing systems. So you have to take care of all these facts. If you don't, then it will amount to plagiarism actually. And that you want to avoid.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Bhavna Chauhan. Bhavna Chauhan, please unmute yourself. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for the excellent session.
Thank you.
Ma'am, may I ask you what should be the ideal length of a research paper?
This is you cannot say that research paper's ideal length.
Yes, ma'am.
See, this one depends on the journal. First, you write whatever you have to write. Fine. Please
Yes, ma'am.
write anything. Drafting it, don't limit yourself. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Select your journal you have finalized, and when you select the journal, just check the journal what is there, because they have some minimum and maximum length also. So this
right, ma'am.
Some journal is not accepting that because of the length, and some other journal is accepting. But my
Right.
would be never ever limit yourself while you are doing research writing within this word limit.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Tara ma'am, unmute yourself.
Who is left, I think.
Tara ma'am. Saraswati ma'am, unmute. Tara ma'am.
I unmuted, ma'am. They have to unmute themselves. I already unmuted every participant.
Yeah.
Thank you. She can write it to me later if she wants.
Jayashree, ma'am, unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am.
Madam, can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, see, in the literature review, what should be the proper way of writing in a what should be the proper way? Which language should be used in the literature review? Paraphrasing is also not allowed. Am I right?
No,
Hello?
paraphrasing you have to do, because you are writing some other like writer's research into your own language. So paraphrasing is one thing you have to do in literature review.
Okay, then other than that, what care we should take in literature review as far as the language is concerned?
Language, whatever I have told you, all the things you have to take care in mind. All the things. But the issue is that out of this webinar session, but I'll just like to point out that don't write summary. There are two summary and literature review. So when you are writing review, you have to critically review it. Not survey, just not write that you should just write the summary of it, and it's not literature review. Literature review is you locate that knowledge within your research work. How is it useful for you? All those things you have to write actually. So don't write summary, write review. Fine?
Yes.
Jayashree? Unmute yourself, Jayashree. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Jayashree. There are two people, Jayashree and Ahmad Chakravarti. Please unmute yourself.
Ma'am, I have one more question.
Yes.
Am I permitted? Okay. Ma'am, when we write research papers following MLA 8th edition or 7th edition, what should be the appropriate phrase at the end of the paper? Is it references or works cited?
Yeah, I think in MLA, work cited. So that you have to check with the style sheet or whatever you are using. It also that should be referencing. Like in my view, it should be that referencing system.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we don't have anybody else here.
There's still Tara ma'am and Archana ma'am. They need to unmute themselves.
Yeah, I don't know. That is the only issue.
I don't know why.
Archana, unmute yourself.
Tara ma'am, Archana ma'am, unmute yourselves.
I think they are not able to.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Ma'am, it is Archana here. I'm a research scholar from Banaras Hindu University, and thank you for this brilliant session, ma'am. I'm very much grateful to you, and I want to know is there any particular book or is there any particular style that we miss? Is there any book to follow for our research writing?
Yes, we
And
have.
how can we get that?
Yes, no, I have given it in reference. You can check that, and in those books also you can get references. So we have a very good book by Strunk and White, which I gave you. It's Element. Right? There are many handbooks also, very good handbooks which you can follow. So you can take one or two of them and keep it as your textbooks. Actually, I've given it in the references.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. I am doing a qualitative case study
Yes.
for English medium instruction to rural background children.
Very good.
So it is very much localized, and I have to use, I have to quote their sayings and in their own language. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you have to go to the field. You are doing case study.
Yes.
Okay.
So means how to incorporate all those things means I have to write their quotations, means whatever they have said I have to quote that in my writing, in my analysis part. So do I need to put it in Hindi since they will be speaking in Hindi only?
See, if
or
you
I have to translate in English?
Yes. See, first thing is when you are doing analyzing, you just do analyzing. You don't quote them first. Second, whatever data you have to put in appendix. You can give it in Hindi, but please translate it so that if there's some person who is not able to know, who doesn't know in Hindi, should also be able to understand, because you are writing your thesis in English, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so you just translate it, but put all these things, whatever they have done, they have said, you put it in appendix actually.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Amar still raised hands. I lowered him. Anybody else? I hope it has helped all of you. And if you have any questions, you can contact me on my email ID, which I have given it to you. I'll give the PPT also to the organizers. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'll pass it on to them.
Ma'am, there is a question in the chat box.
Yes. Whose question?
Do the words used for describing the research outcome?
I saw that. Yes, I did that because I have taken, that is why I have given the references for where to use. Like in the introduction, you have to use present tense, and after that, you are writing research, you have to use past perfect tense. Okay, fine. So you have to take care, obviously, of all those things. So it is very different. Anybody else?
I think we are done with the session. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, here I conclude this today's session. I thank Richa ma'am from bottom of my heart for such a lovely, excellent and informative session. Ma'am, I'm sure we're going to take a lot of information today, knowledge today, and write our papers or dissertation thesis even in a more better fashion. And I'm sure our English is going to improve. after attending this session. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
If there is
Thanks a lot.
any issue which is still there, you can contact me on my email ID.
Yes.
Always available.
Yes. Before we conclude, participants, please note the feedback link would be provided on the webinar group, right? Please fill up the feedback link to get your certificates. Without fail, this link would be open for around 30 minutes. So please do it immediately. Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Sumi Nejit, ma'am, to propose the vote of thanks.
First of all, I thank our management, especially our president and secretary, sir. Without their support, we can't materialize this event. Now I thank Principal Dr. Ravindran Kartadi, sir, for his motivation and guidance for this webinar. I also thank IQAC Coordinator Dr. Hinduja, sir, Professor Jayashree Madam for their constant support. Now I thank our resource person of today's event, Dr. Richa Srishti, for enlightening us about the use of English language in academic writing with an excellent presentation. Now I am sure after this webinar, our participants can use English in their academics in a better way. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accept our invitation.
Thank you.
I thank our technical team in charge, Mrs. Saraswati Nadi, members Ms. Vaidehi and Ms. Nahid, for their technical support of this event. Lastly, on behalf of Language Club and Research Cell, I thank all my participants and my colleagues. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so may I leave?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, shall I end the meeting?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.